Today we're going to talk about one of the only crypto assets that I'm holding for the long term, and that is Steem. Now that's probably going to set off an alarm for a lot of you because I promote Steemit at the end of most of my videos, so let me go ahead and give fair disclosure here first. I do post all of my content on Steemit, and I am compensated in Steem, or basically the equivalent of Steem, on the platform for any upvotes that I get. Therefore, there is an economic incentive for me to boost the price of Steem by posting a video like this, because then I will get paid more by Steemit. Furthermore, Steem is a thinly traded cryptocurrency, at least relative to its overall market cap, and as a result of that, my video theoretically could influence the price. However, I'm hoping at this point in time I've built some degree of trust with all of you. You know that I typically don't BS anybody, and I'm very upfront in terms of what I see wrong with things, and it's going to be no different here with Steem. So let me go ahead and start off here with the biggest concern when it comes to Steem, or at least some of the biggest concerns that we've seen. First of all, the history. If you're not familiar with the history of Steem, it's not exactly a particularly nice one. When they launched, they had very little information available on how to mine it. Furthermore, the information that was provided was inaccurate. They only had a Linux wallet. They didn't offer a Windows wallet, so a lot of people who wanted to mine couldn't do it. And then furthermore, in addition to that, those who were aware of how to mine, you had to be an advanced GitHub user to really understand it. So as a result of that, we had a bunch of people talking about, how frustrated they were with being able to try to figure out this mining process. Meanwhile, the developers are mining since day one. And so they had this situation where the developers were achieving or obtaining the majority of the Steem tokens, I believe, 75 to 80% or so. And then eventually something wrong happened, I believe, to some of the mining equipment belonging to the developers. And during this downtime, other miners were able to achieve the majority of the Steem, finally fixing some of the distribution problems where the developers weren't getting all of them. So then they decided to say, okay, you know what, we're going to relaunch. I think they relaunched because they wanted to be a little bit more clear about how to mine, or that's how they made it sound. But in reality, it really seems like they relaunched because they had that little bit of downtime and they weren't dominating mining during that period of time. So then they relaunch, if this loads, here we go. And when they relaunched, people were pointing out the fact that essentially they relaunched because of the fact that they just wanted to have the majority of the tokens for themselves through this stealth mining phase where they achieved, I believe, 80% or so of the overall Steem production for quite a while. And then in addition to that, they sent all of this Steem over to one account on the Steemit blockchain, or not the Steemit blockchain, excuse me, the Steem blockchain. It's so easy to make that mistake because the account name is Steemit. So they sent over a bunch of Steem to this account. They then vested that Steem, and at the time, they were powering it down frequently, which means that they were encouraging everybody else to vest the Steem, which means to make it illiquid, basically like a long-term investment, shows confidence in the blockchain. Meanwhile, they were powering down all the time and weren't really doing what they were saying. And anyway, the point is that this Steem power that they had on here is to be used for development purposes. Now, I think things have significantly improved since this initial launch where so many shady things were happening, and most people at the time really thought that Steem was a shitcoin. There's still arguments to believe that it is a shitcoin. I'm going to be honest with you on that front. When it comes to their business model, you can make the argument that it seems Ponzi scheme-like. I would completely understand that, which we will get into a little bit later. But there were some massive changes to Steem with hard fork number 16, which I believe went active in December of 2016. And when they made that change, the witnesses received less, the Steem power holders received less, and then the reward pool started becoming a little bit nicer for people, and the inflation rate decreased substantially. So everything got cut down for the most part because this inflation rate was taken down. There wasn't as massive an incentive to hold Steem power as there was before, even though there is still an incentive, but just nowhere near as big. And things since then, I think, have been a lot better. However, there are still some obvious concerns with the platform, but let me go ahead and give some explanations behind the platform first. So, Steemit is this platform that's very much like Reddit, and it is an application that uses the Steem blockchain. So it is not the blockchain itself. There is a difference between Steemit and Steem. However, I would argue pretty much all of the valuation for the Steem tokens comes from Steemit. Therefore, in my opinion, basically Steemit is equal to Steem in the sense that it provides most of the value for Steem. So even though that's not true from a technical basis, from an economical and financial basis, it basically is true. So Steemit is this platform that uses Steem that's very much like Reddit. You can post whatever you want to post. Sometimes it's going to be longer form, sometimes it's going to be shorter form. And you have essentially the equivalent of subreddits, except they're called tags here. So this is in the Shark School subreddit, or in this case, tag. This is in the art subreddit, or tag. Basically supplement the word tag with subreddit, and you have a very similar experience as you do with Reddit. However, there are some key differences here. One of them is that there's a little bit more formatting freedom, and also in general, the platform seems to skew a little bit more towards a little bit longer form content than Reddit will typically have, because it's not really, it's a little bit more like content creation focused rather than discussion focused, I should say. So that's one of the key differences. And then the other one that you probably notice right off of the bat is this payments here. And if you've ever come to Steemit, you're probably blown away by the amount of money that is paid to a lot of posts. This money comes from people that upvote the post, and you provide more value to that content creator based off of the amount of Steem power you have. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about what Steem power is or what Steem is and what Steem dollars are. I'm not going to talk about that too much because it gets really confusing without having its own separate video on it. So in this case, we're just going to say Steem and Steem power are the same. They are different. Okay, Steem power is vested into the platform. It becomes illiquid. It's harder or impossible to sell it. You have to cash it out over a period of time. But for now, we're just going to basically make them equivalent. So the more Steem power you have, the more influence you have on the platform. Now, there are benefits to that and there are downsides to that. So what are the downsides associated with having it so that the more Steem you have, the more power you have on the platform? Well, what often happens in a lot of these cases is so many of these trending posts that we see on Steemit are only there because certain accounts sell their votes. Because those votes are worth a lot more, they're realizing, you know what? Instead of only getting the reward associated with curating posts, which is roughly 25% of the rewards, last I checked at least, instead of just getting that reward, why don't we go ahead and sell our vote so that people can basically promote themselves, right? We're just going to give this value anyway, right? If we weren't to sell the vote, then we would just be giving that value away and only getting a portion of it back through the curator reward. Why don't we go ahead and sell that vote? People can use that to market themselves, and everybody's happy, right? Theoretically. But it completely destroys the integrity of the entire platform. And in fact, you can already see that at the very top here, we have this post talking about bots. And this person obviously uses bots. But the problem a lot of times with all of this is that people are using bots to upvote content that really isn't all that valuable. So we have a situation in a lot of cases where we have content that is artificially promoted that doesn't provide much value at all. I mean, I've seen situations where posts are getting more upvotes than they get views. And that should never happen. But it does happen on Steemit all the time. Another thing that happens all the time is we have what are called whales on the platform who have a lot of Steem, and then they can upvote content that they particularly like for whatever reason. The issue at times is that these whales aren't curating content necessarily that is of higher quality or provides more value to Steemit as a whole. They're just upvoting content that either maybe they are close with the creator, so that basically that reward goes to a friend or some sort of relationship along those lines, or they're upvoting it just because they have some level of favoritism. And there's some issues associated with that as well. So one example of this is we have, and this is probably the most notable example, so just give it a second here to load. But this guy that I'm going to show you is one of the most controversial posters on the platform. And I don't know how to say his name, Hyjin, I guess. I'm not really sure exactly. But the problem a lot of people have with his post, it's all technical analysis. And if I go ahead and click on one of these posts, you can see that they're usually relatively short, right? So this is probably, I'm going to guess like 250 to 300 words or so. And most of it is a legal disclaimer anyway. It's basic financial or, technical analysis that he does. And he just posts it a zillion times a day, right? So he posts it, today, roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the last 24 hours. And you can see how much he gets paid for each of these posts. Now, he does get more views than most people on the platform. He absolutely deserves a certain amount of this. However, a lot of this is really coming from one guy, and it's this guy right here. You can always check, oops, clicked the wrong thing there. You can always check who's really contributing to a post. So if we go to this guy and then go to his wallet, you're going to find that this guy has 1.3 million Steem power. And as a result of that, he has far more influence on the platform than most people do. And therefore, when he upvotes a post, it gets far more value than most other posts on the platform. And so he just keeps upvoting all of Hyjin's posts. And there was a huge controversy about this. I still think that controversy is still going on because the guy was getting like $20,000 a week that he was taking from the reward pool because of this guy upvoting him all the time. The real problem here is that a lot of content that isn't of the highest quality makes it to the top, and it's unfortunate that things like that happen. It really is all about who you know and less about producing the best quality of work possible. And just like anywhere else, you do have to get yourself out there. It's just unfortunate that the way this works so far is you either have to have it well with a whale or you have to buy votes from bots. And really, if social media is buying artificial votes from bots, it's no longer social media. I can't believe how many people on this platform think that bots are okay, especially on a social media platform. So anyway, those are my gripes with Steemit. There's a lot more I have as well. For example, all the money comes from investors. So, and there's no cash flows coming to Steemit, right? There's no advertisements or anything of that nature. So all of the value is coming from investors, and it's difficult to say, will that ever run out, especially if we hit a bear market? We're already seeing a situation where payments on Steem have gone down drastically as a result of course, this crypto, I don't know if you want to call it a bear market yet, but this massive downtrend that we've had in Bitcoin from 20,000 down to 7,000. Of course, we've seen a huge hit to payments on this platform. And I think a lot of content creators are used to some large payments for content that's otherwise honestly really bad. And that's the biggest gripe I have with Steemit is a lot of the content is so bad. So I don't know. All of it's fairly controversial in that sense. So why am I invested in it? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's the only cryptocurrency or crypto asset, because it's not really a cryptocurrency, that I know of that has an application with real use, an entire culture behind it, and a ton of users. So if we go to Alexa or SimilarWeb, and give it a moment to load, but if we go to either of those websites, we can actually verify that Steemit does in fact get a ton of visitors. And you can even see here that even though, of course, most of this is all artificially boosted to some extent, there is in fact interaction on this platform. You can see that so many of these posts are getting, 71 comments, 135 comments, 70 comments, 217 comments. That's not dead. That's fairly good for a platform that is based off of a crypto asset. If we go to Alexa here, you can see that Steam used to be, or Steemit rather, was in the top 1,000 websites. It's come down a little bit, just like all other cryptocurrency related websites have. And then in addition to that, you can also see here on SimilarWeb that they get, in the course of a month, 40 million visits or 39 million visits, right? That's a huge amount. And you can see at its peak, it almost had 50 million visits in a single month. That's incredible. For a crypto asset, that's incredible, because if you look at most of them, they don't have any use at all. So Steem has that over other crypto assets, and I'm really excited for that. I really want this to succeed. There is a team behind it. They are developing for it. They are working for it. There are still some sketchy elements that are going on. A lot of this feels like a cartel where all the whales collude together to promote certain content and promote certain ideas and agendas, and there's a lot of questionable activity. We also don't know the delegated proof of stake method that they have with the witnesses. I don't know how well that will scale to even larger. And well, obviously from a speed perspective, it scales quite well. That's part of the whole thing. What I'm talking about more is along the lines of, is it corruptible? We don't know for sure on that front. So far, it's been good. I really think so far it's worked out quite well. I think delegated proof of stake is far better than most people give it credit for, even though it does have issues associated with it. But that is another concern that you could look at. And they are working on other ways to push changes to the platform a little bit faster. I don't know if that's going to compromise any decentralization. My point here is that there's a team working on it. There is a culture here. I have actually watched wars behind different members of the community happen on here, and there's huge support on both fronts. So clearly people care about the platform, which is more than I can say about most other cryptocurrencies. So at this stage, I honestly think that Steem is the furthest along of all cryptocurrencies. Seriously, in terms of what it's trying to do, it's definitely the furthest along. There are still a lot of issues. The user interface is not the best. It's been in beta forever. It's still got a lot of changes that need to be made before people switch over from actual social media. However, it does seem to have a use. People do seem to visit here just to hang out on the platform and actually socialize, which I'm impressed with. And it does seem to be attracting a number of different content creators. Now, it is attracting those content creators because of the wealth that it provides. And again, I don't know how sustainable that is when it comes from investors. But if there is something that I think has a chance to succeed, this certainly has the inner workings of something that could. There are certainly arguments you can make against it related to its business model, related to where the money comes from, related to how centralized or decentralized you think it is. There are arguments in terms of its roots. You can make all sorts of different arguments against it. And I totally understand that. And I wouldn't recommend going in on it any more than you can afford to lose, which is dumb, obvious advice, but seriously. But that's my opinion. This is one of the few. People have been asking me to make something that's a little bit more bullish. And I spent more than half of the video talking about things that were bearish. So that's just the nature of who I am. And I'm hoping that you all trust that I am telling you the truth. I am telling you how I actually feel about it. And I'm not just trying to promote something because I have an economic incentive to do so. As usual, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I usually plug in my Steemit here, but the whole video is about it anyway, so I'm sure you know what I'm going to do. Check out my Steemit if you'd like to interact with me. Check out my Twitter if you'd like to keep up with me and other random thoughts that I have. Otherwise, leave a like, comment, and subscription, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.